The Washington Rental Agreement. In this video, we will tell you about the most noteworthy aspects of rental agreements in the state of Washington. What is a rental agreement? A rental agreement, or a lease, is a document that outlines the arrangement between two parties regarding a property rental. The one who's paying rent is called a tenant, while the owner of the property, who lets the other party use it under certain conditions, is called a landlord. The parties may also be called a lessor and lessee. Typically, a rental agreement lasts for 6 or 12 months, with rent being paid every month or every week. There is one federal disclosure that works for all lease agreements in the United States. This is called the lead disclosure, and it requires the landlord to tell the tenant about all known lead paint hazards. They should also provide the state-approved version of the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. However, this requirement applies to not all types of residential dwellings. Required disclosures. Apart from the above-mentioned disclosure, the landlord should also provide the following information in a lease agreement: the names and addresses of the persons authorized to manage the premises to be rented and its owners, a written inventory of the condition of the rental unit, excluding ordinary wear and tear, information on whether there is any visible evidence of mold in areas readily accessible within the interior of the dwelling unit, buyer safety and protection information, name and address and location of the depository and any subsequent change thereof. Security deposits. In Washington, the security deposit is completely up to the landlord. The landlord can use the deposit to pay unpaid rent or repair any property damages caused by the tenant after conducting an inspection for damages on the premise. The tenant should get an itemized statement specifying detriments by mail. The deposit should be returned by the landlord within 21 days after the termination of the tenancy and delivery of possession. The landlord who intentionally fails to return the security deposit along with the itemized statement of damages should return to the tenant 2 times the amount of the deposit and the cost of suit or arbitration, including a reasonable attorney's fee. Landlord access. The Washington Code requires the landlord to provide a 24-hour notice before entering the rented premises to perform routine maintenance that has not been requested by the tenant. If the tenant makes a request for maintenance, the landlord is not required to provide notice to them. The tenant's consent is also not needed in case of emergency. Termination of agreement. To terminate a month-to-month tenancy, a notice to terminate the lease should be sent at least 20 days before the expected date by either party. Notices for non-payment and non-compliance. If the tenant fails to pay rent, at least a 3-day notice to pay or quit should be mailed by the landlord in Washington. If the tenant breaches the lease in another way, the landlord should give them at least a 10-day notice to remedy the breach or vacate the premises.